bkgoswami. And finally, check. Yes, we are streaming live. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to Zoom. Okay, let's start chanting. 1 second. We will get our songbook out and we will chant something. Let's see. What should we chant today? Chant Gurudev again. Okay. Everybody ready? Ooh. All right. Say Trina Peccati na Kripa Vendutia Coro da say Trina Peccati na Sakalatsane Odia Coro Shamana Sprayina Sakalatsane Odia Coro Shamana Sprayina Sakale Saman Korite Shakati Devanatta Yata Yata Sakale Saman Korite Shakati Devanatta Yata Yata Navedoga Yibo Harinamasuke Aparada Hoibina Big Gadibo, Okinam Suke, Aparada Hoivia, Tapehelo Kripalo Bea Jana Ritata Hoivena, Piheno Kripalo Bea Jana Ritata Hoivena. Shakti Buri Napiati Tin Koromore Atrasata Shakti Buri Namiati Tin Koromore Atrasata Yo Yata Vichare China Hipoi Tomaraki Una Sara Yokta Vichare Kichuna Hipoi Tomarakaruna Sara Konana hoile kantia kantia anadara kiva. Konana hoile kantia kantia anadara kiva. Okay. Ripa Benudia, go away, that's a dream of Beckati. Benudia, go away, that's a dream of Beckati. Sakala Sahane, Ulatia Goro, Shabana Sprayagina. Sakala Sahane, Ulatia Goro, Shabana Sprayagina. Ripa Bendia, Corona, Satrina, Beccatina. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Gold, Haribo, oh, Haribo, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Tetas at Shiman. His Divine Grace Savaya Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Parem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwait Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Gijai Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Saim Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Kijai Vrindavanam Kijai Maturadam Kijai Jagannath Swami Kijai Yamunamai Kijai Shrimati Tulasi Devi Kijai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Kijai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya. Krishna Pristaya Bhutale. Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nivashesha Shunyavadi. Paschatya Deja Tarane. So we're going to continue with our reading of Krishna book. We're still on chapter 87, which is the prayers by the personified Vedas. Oh, someone send me a chat message. Okay. That's just somebody. So anyway, let me turn off my phone so I don't get beeps all the time. So chapter 87 is the prayers of the personified Vedas, and it's the longest chapter in the Krishna book, and we're on our 8th time of reading it. So hopefully we finish it today. But it's very philosophical, so we're going slowly through this particular chapter. First, we'll read the translation of Gurudev. Gurudev, give this servant just one drop of mercy. I'm lower than a blade of grass. Give me all help, give me strength. Let me be as you are without desires or aspirations. Gurudev, I offer you all respects, for thus I may have the energy to know you correctly. Then by chanting the holy name in great ecstasy, all my offenses will cease. Gurudev, when will such mercy fall to this one who is weak and devoid of intelligence? Allow me to be with you. Gurudev, if you examine me, you will find no good qualities, Your mercy is all that I am made of. If you are not merciful unto me, I can only weep and will not be able to maintain my life. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Ki Jai. So, Om Gana Timirandasha Galanjana Shlakya Chakshu Medikam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. Let's go on to the Krishna book. So, we're going to share the screen with everybody. Give me 1 second to find the right screen, because I have a lot of things open right now. Oh my God, there it is. Okay, here we go. All righty, here we go. Okay. Right in the middle of the 87th chapter. Devotional service is never within the jurisdiction of the law of karma. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Sagunan Samati Chaitan Brahmabhuyaya Kalpate. That's from the Bhagavad Gita 14:26. And here's the translation. Devotees of the personality of Godhead transcend all the reactions of the three modes of material nature and are situated on the transcendental platform of Brahman. So the full verse is Mamchiyo Vyavacharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samati Chaitan Brahmabhuyaya Kalpate. In other words, when one performs emotional service, Bhakti Yogena Sevate, he transcends the modes of material nature and becomes situated on the spiritual platform on Brahman. The devotees are liberated from both this life and the next. Any work done in the material world for Yajna, Vishnu or Krishna, is considered to be liberated work without connection with the Chuta, the infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no possibility of stopping the resultant actions of the law of karma. The life of Krishna consciousness is the life of liberation. The conclusion is that a devotee, by the grace of the Lord, is liberated in both this life and the next, whereas the karmis, jnanis, and yogis are never liberated either in this life or in the next. The reason is they're always accruing karma, accruing or working out karma, but always under the jurisdiction of karma. So you can't get liberated as long as you have karma. And there's no way to get rid of karma except by performing devotional service. There is no other way. You can do good things and get good karma, but that doesn't negate the bad karma you did in the past and the reactions that you're due for that bad karma. Just like the story of King Nriga, he did a whole bunch of good things. He was a great karmi. A whole bunch of good things, practically unlimited, serving the brahmanas. Yet there was one little mistake he made, and so he had to suffer for that mistake in spite of all the good things he did, and he had to become a lizard. The personified Vedas continue, Dear Lord, anyone who by your grace has understood the glories of your lotus feet is callous to material happiness and distress. That means, callous means neutral. I don't care for it, don't care for happiness, and I don't worry about distress. Material pangs are inevitable as long as we exist within the material world, but a devotee does not divert his attention to such actions and reactions, which are the results of pious and impious activities. Nor is a devotee very much disturbed or pleased by praise or condemnation from people in general, except where it affects our preaching. I just have to clarify this a little bit. A devotee is sometimes greatly praised because of transcendental activities, and sometimes he is criticized, even though there's no reason for adverse criticism. Haven't we all experienced that? And therefore, we don't enter into controversies on the internet. So when criticizes us on the internet, we just ignore it. And it says in the Mahabharata that if you just tolerate someone criticizing you and you don't try to counter it or argue with him, you get his good karma and he gets your bad karma. It's nice, isn't it? So sometimes we say to people, just bring on the criticism because I need all your good works and I'm going to dump everything off on you. So course, that's not our mood. The pure devotee, however, is always callous to praise or condemnation by ordinary people. Actually, the devotee's activities on the transcendental are on the transcendental plane. He is not interested in the praise or condemnation of people engaged in material activities. If the devotee can thus maintain his transcendental position, his liberation in this life and the next is guaranteed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee's transcendental position within this material world is maintained, here's a very important point, in the association of pure devotees simply by hearing the glorious activities enacted by the Lord in different ages and in different incarnations. The Krishna conscious movement is based on this principle, hearing and chanting. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung, "My dear Lord, let me be engaged in your transcendental loving service as indicated by the previous acharyas, and let me live in the association of pure devotees. That is my desire life after life." In other words, a devotee does not much care whether or not he is liberated. He is eager only for devotional service. Devotional service means that one does not do anything independently of the sanction of the acharyas. The actions of the Krishna conscious movement are directed by the previous acharyas, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami. In the association of devotees following these principles, a devotee is able to perfectly maintain his transcendental position. It's pretty easy to understand. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that a devotee who knows him perfectly is very dear to him. 4 kinds of pious men take to devotional service. If a pious man is in distress, he approaches the Lord for mitigation of his distress. It's one reason to come to God. If a pious man is in need of material help, he prays to the Lord for such help. In other words, he wants money or opulence or some material good. That's another reason. If a pious man is actually inquisitive about the science of God, he approaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. In other words, he's curious. Similarly, here's the 4th type, a pious man who's simply eager to know the science of Krishna and practice it, also approaches the Supreme Lord. Out of these 4 classes of men, the last is praised by Krishna himself in the Gita. Krishna says this is the best type. Because a person who tries to understand Krishna with full knowledge and devotion by following in the footsteps of the previous acharya, conversing with spiritual scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is praiseworthy. Such a devotee can understand that all conditions of life, favorable and unfavorable, are created by the supreme will of the Lord. And when he has fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, he does not care whether his condition of life is favorable or unfavorable. A devotee takes even an unfavorable condition to be the special favor of the personality of Godhead. Actually, there are no unfavorable conditions for a devotee. Knowing that everything is coming by the will of the Lord, he sees every condition as favorable in any condition of life. He is simply enthusiastic to discharge his devotional service. This devotional attitude is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. A devotee is never distressed in reverse conditions of life, nor is he overjoyed in favorable conditions. In the higher stages of devotional service, a devotee is not even concerned with the list of do's and do nots. In other words, because he follows everything automatically. Because of spontaneity. Such a position can be maintained only by following the footsteps of the acharyas. Because a pure devotee follows in the footsteps of the acharyas, any action he performs to discharge devotional service should be understood to be on the transcendental platform. Lord Krishna therefore instructs us that an acharya is above criticism. A neophyte devotee should not consider himself to be on the same plane as the acharya. It should be accepted that the acharyas are on the same platform as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and as such, neither Krishna nor his representative acharya should be subjected to any adverse criticism by the neophyte devotees. Now, just one point I wanted to make, not specifically about the acharya being criticized, but about the 4 types of people that approach Krishna. Those who are looking for wealth, those who are inquisitive, those who are looking for knowledge, and finally, those who are in distress. The reason Krishna says that those who are looking to understand Krishna and become Krishna conscious are the best is because those are the ones who remain stable. Because the other ones when they get the fruits of their desires from Krishna, they may, and usually do, lose interest in Krishna. You pray to God, my dear Lord, please give me money. Okay, got the money. Okay, God, whatever. Just like I've seen sometimes devotees get a massive inheritance and then they're gone. Not everybody. Or someone is in distress. Like when I had my kidney thing, I was screaming in pain. And some people like that, when the distress is gone, they forget about God. What do they say? There's no atheists in the foxholes. Foxholes are like the ditches that the soldiers dig to protect themselves from the incoming fire from the opposite party. And in those foxholes, while the soldiers are seeing the rounds, they're called rounds, or bullets or missiles fly overhead, they definitely believe in God at that point. And someone who's inquisitive, as soon as they find out what Krishna consciousness is all about, okay, they may leave. But someone who wants to understand Krishna, then they stay, because that's their basic motivation, to understand Krishna, and they worship Krishna by their intelligence. The personified Vedas thus worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different ways. Offering worship to the Supreme Lord by praying means remembering his transcendental qualities, pastimes, and activities. But the Lord's pastimes and qualities are unlimited. It is not possible for us to remember all the qualities of the Lord. Therefore, the personified Vedas worship to the best of their ability, and at the end they spoke as follows. In fact, it's even impossible, in one sense, for the Lord to understand the extent of all of his pastimes and qualities, because as soon as he, in the form of Anantashesh, tries to come to the conclusion or understanding, those qualities and pastimes expand unlimitedly at every, transcendental second. Dear Lord, although Lord Brahma, the predominating deity of the highest planet Brahmaloka, and King Indra, the predominating demigod of the heavenly planets, as well as the predominating deities of such planets as the sun and the moon, are all very confidential directors of this mature world, they have very little knowledge about you. Wow. Then what? In other words, even a pure devotee, Indra's not a pure devotee, but Lord Brahma is a pure devotee. So very little in comparison to the extent. So we all know very little about Krishna. You can't know any more than very little. Then what can ordinary human beings and mental speculators know of you? It is not possible for anyone to enumerate the unlimited transcendental qualities of the Lordship. No one, not even the mental speculators and the demigods on the higher planets, planetary systems, is actually able to estimate the length and breadth of your form and characteristics. We think that even your Lordship does not have complete knowledge of your transcendental qualities, which is what I just said. The reason is that you are unlimited. Although it is not befitting to say that you do not know yourself, it is practical to understand that because you have unlimited qualities and energies, and because your knowledge is also unlimited, there is unlimited competition. Here's the interesting point: between your knowledge and your expansion of your energies or glories. That's incredible understanding. The idea is that because God and his knowledge are both unlimited, as soon as God is cognizant of some of his energies, he perceives that he still has more energies. In this way, both his energies and his knowledge increase. Because both of them are unlimited, there is no end to the energies and no end to the knowledge with which to understand the energies. God is undoubtedly omniscient, but the personified Vedas say that even God himself does not know the full extent of his energies. This does not mean that God is not omniscient. When an actual fact is unknown to a certain person, this is called ignorance or lack of knowledge. This is not applicable to God, however, because he knows himself perfectly, but still, as his energies and activities increase, he also increases his knowledge to understand them. Both are increasing unlimitedly, and there's no end to it. In that sense, it can be said that even God himself does not know the limit of his energies and qualities, so he knows and doesn't know simultaneously. Interesting. Well, God is beyond all mundane logic. The spiritual realm is beyond cause and effect, mundane logical principles, because Krishna makes up those logical principles. So even to try to understand God utilizing logic, it's, I guess, pretty fruitless. How God is unlimited in his, let me just check the sound levels. Yeah, we got the right thing. How God is unlimited in his expansion of energies and activities can be roughly calculated by any sane and sober living entity. It is said in the Vedic literature that innumerable universes issue forth when Mahavishnu exhales in his yoga nidra, and that innumerable universes enter his body when it inhales. So, yoga nidra means connection of sleep. In other words, Krishna is always in yoga, connection with himself. We have to imagine that these universes, which according to our limited knowledge are expanded unlimitedly, are so great that the gross and subtle ingredients, the 5 elements of the cosmic manifestation, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, along with the total material energy and false ego, are not only within the universe, but cover the universe in 7 layers. So let me explain. Well, actually, probably each layer 10 times bigger than the previous one. So the subtle form of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, they form the coverings of the universe, and each one is thicker. And, it's hard to explain in terms of material dimensions, but anyway, it's thicker somehow or other, even though it's subtle. And if you understand it, great. So, that 10 times thicker than the other one, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, 10 to the 8th power. In this way, each and every universe is very securely packed, and there are numberless universes. All these universes float within the innumerable pores of the transcendental body of Mahavishnu. It is stated that just as the atoms and particles of dust are floating within the air, along with the birds, and their number cannot be calculated, so innumerable universes are floating within the pores of the transcendental body of the Lord. So sometimes we can compare the universes to cells in the body. And there's the cellular membrane, the wall. It's interesting. Sometimes what we call the microcosm is reflected in the macrocosm and vice versa. In other words, the small things are reflected in many ways in the large cosmic scale things. That is, even the ratios, there's sacred ratios that are actually maintained between the planets, between the particles in the atom, between the parts of the body. There between, let's see, what else? Practically everything, every aspect of creation, you have these reflections of the different ratios, the reflections of the different types of functioning, from the macrocosmic to the microcosmic. For this reason, the Vedas say that God is beyond the grasp of knowledge. Avan manasa gochara, to understand the length and breadth of God is beyond the jurisdiction of our mental speculation. Therefore, a person who is actually learned and sane does not claim to be God, but tries to understand God, making distinctions between spirit and matter. By such careful discrimination, one can clearly understand that the Supreme Soul is transcendental to both the superior and inferior energies, although he has a direct connection with both. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains that although everything is resting on his energy, he is different or separate from the energy. I think we explained this before in the last few classes. Nature and the living entities are sometimes designated as Prakriti and Purusha, respectively. The whole cosmic manifestation is an amalgamation of Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha can sometimes mean person or male, and Prakriti can mean like the energy. Nature is the ingredient cause, and the living entities are the effective cause. And I'll explain that. Just like we talked yesterday, the last few days, about clay. Like if you have some clay, like a lump, like silly putty, the clay is the ingredient cause. And the little kid who is playing with the clay and making shapes is the effective cause of the manifestation of the clay, or what it looks like. These two causes combine together, and the effect is this cosmic manifestation. When one is fortunate enough to come to the right conclusion about this cosmic manifestation, everything going on within it, he knows it to be caused directly and indirectly by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Directly means it's coming directly from the body of the Lord. Indirectly means he glances at it and it's put into shape by his representatives, such as Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, other personalities, and the Prajapatis. It is concluded in the Brahma Samhita, therefore, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadirada Govinda Sarvakarna Karnam. That's Brahma Samhita 5:1. After much deliberation and consideration, when one has attained the perfection of knowledge, one comes to the conclusion that Krishna or God is the original cause of all causes. Instead of speculating about the measurement of God, which is a waste of time, whether he is so long or so wide, or falsely philosophizing, one should come to the conclusion of the Brahma Samhita. Krishna or God is Sarvakarna Karnam, 5:1, the cause of all causes. That is the perfection of knowledge. In other words, God is beyond the cause and effect of this material world or of anything. There's no cause to God. There's no cause to why he thinks a certain way. There's no cause to why he does anything, except for he wants to. With us, there's always a cause beyond our simple wanting to for any of our actions. Like if I want to eat a certain type of food, that's because certain modes of nature are affecting me, or certain chemicals or hormones of my body are acting a certain way, or I've been conditioned in the past to eat that food when I was young. There's some sort of ethnic food. So, thus the Veda, Stuti, or the prayers offered by the personified Vedas to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu were first narrated in disciplic succession by Sanandana to his brothers. Sanandana is one of the four Kumaras, all of who were born of Brahma at the beginning of the creation of the universe. The four Kumaras were the firstborn sons of Brahma, therefore they are known as Purva Jata. That means basically the old firstborn or beginning, the Purva, the beginning birth, or those who were born in the beginning. As it's stated in the Bhagavad Gita, that the parampara system, or the disciplic succession, begins with Krishna himself. Similarly, here in the prayers of the personified Vedas, it is to be understood that the parampara system begins with the personality of Godhead Narayana Rishi. We should remember that this Vedic stuti verse is narrated by Kumara Sanandana. That means one of the Kumaras, whose name is Sanandana. And the narration is repeated by Narayan Rishi and Bhadarikashvara. Narayan Rishi is the incarnation of Krishna, who is showing us the path of self-realization by undergoing severe austerities. In this age, Lord Chaitanya demonstrated the path of pure devotional service by putting himself in the role of a pure devotee. Similarly, in the past, Lord Narayan Rishi was an incarnation of Krishna, performed severe austerities in the Himalayan mountain ranges. Sri Narada Muni was hearing from him. So in this statement given by Narayan Rishi to Narada Muni, as narrated by Kumara Sanandana, in the form of the Vedic stuti, it is understood that God is the one supreme and that all others are his servants. So fortunately, we have Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada, who showed us that we don't have to undergo all those austerities. Srila Prabhupada sometimes explains that in the previous ages, the austerities were, well, not just austere, but it's like torture. Really, tapa means basically to burn. So that sometimes the yogis would stand in ice water in the middle of the winter when it was below freezing, up to their waists, of course. And they would perform their devotional services. Sometimes in the summer, they would surround themselves by fire. And in the summer, it's quite hot in India, can be up to 126 Fahrenheit, 40, 50 degrees centigrade. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated, Ekale Ishvara Krishna. That's CC Adi Lila 5, 142. Krishna is the only supreme God. Ekale, that means there's one supreme God. Ekale, that means one. Ishvara means controller. His name is Krishna. Arasabda Vricha, all others are his servants. Yare Aiche, Nachaya, Setaiche Kare Nricha. The Supreme Lord, as he desires, is engaging all the living entities in different activities, and thus they exhibit their different talents and tendencies. This Veda Stuti is thus the original instruction regarding the relationship existing between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The highest platform of self-realization for the living entity is the attainment of devotional service, which is what we're doing. One cannot be engaged in devotional life or Krishna consciousness unless one is fully free from material contamination. And of course, we have the mercy of Prabhupada, so we can engage and practice devotional service in the meantime. So we are actually engaged in devotional service because Prabhupada is accepting our imperfect offerings, and therefore Krishna is accepting. Narayana Rishi informed Narada Muni that the essence of all the Vedas and Vedic scriptures, namely the four Vedas, Rig, Atharva, Yajur, and Samaveda, the Upanishads, the Puranas, and the Vedanta Sutra, is to render transcendental loving service to the Lord. So the four Vedas, the original four Vedas, mainly deal with ritualistic activities and sometimes, different Brahminical curses or spells and stuff like that. So, and then the Upanishads deal with spiritual knowledge. Upanishad means to come closer to the spiritual master. Purana means basically old, but like the Bhagavatam is one of the Puranas, and they deal with histories of kings, ultimately culminating in the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the Sattvic Puranas, the good Puranas, ones in goodness. And there's Puranas in the mode of passion for those who are in the mode of passion, and there's Puranas in the mode of ignorance. Not the Puranas in the mode of ignorance, but Puranas for those in the mode of ignorance. And Vedanta Sutra is a short exposition on different, or explanation. Sutra means like a thread, very precise statement on the statements of the Upanishads, and the Bhagavatam is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. In this connection, Narayan Rishi has used one particular word, ras. In devotional service, this ras is the via medium, or the basic principle for the exchange of dealings between the Lord and the living entities. Wow. Ras is also described in the Vedas, raso vaisa. Let me explain what ras. Ras means like a taste, or let's say the experience of an exchange with another living entity, or also with certain, in the material world, with types of food, like a rus, a sweet rus, or a sour rus, or different types of bitter rus. It means basically an experience, a taste, something you're tasting. So there's tastes of relationship. There's a rus between two people also. It may be, anger. It may be love. It may be a parental rus. Anyway, that's all described in Nectar of Devotion. The Supreme Lord, so we have relationship. It means basically relationship. We have relationship with food too. The Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure. All the Vedic scriptures, including the Puranas, The Vedas, the Pranishads, the Vedanta Sutra teach the living entities how to attain the stage of ras. Wow. Spiritual ras, of course. The Bhagavatam also says that the statements in the Mahaparana, Srimad Bhagavatam, constitute the essence, ras, of all Vedic literatures. Wow. Nigama Kalpatura Kalitam Palam. This is actually a very important verse in the Bhagavatam 113 that describes the Bhagavatam is the essence of the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature. So you're supposed to taste it. I mean, not literally with your tongue, but you can taste it with your ear. It's full of rus. And so the holy name is full of rus too. Namachintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Purna Shuddha Mitya Do Vinatwam Namanamino. So Rasa Vigraha is the form of ras. We understand that with the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there issued the 4 Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, the Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda, and also the histories like the Mahabharata and the Puranas. These are called itihasas. That means thus it happened. So the Mahabharata deals with the history of the Pandavas and the Mahabharata war, and another history, the Ramayana, which deals with the pastimes of Lord Ramchandra and Hanuman. And the Ramayana is the world's longest, largest epic poem, which you consider to be the history of the world. The Vedic histories, like the Puranas and Mahabharata, are called the 5th Veda, Panchama Veda Uchate. The 28 verses of the Vedic Stuti are to be considered the essence of all Vedic knowledge. The 4 Kumaras and other authorized sages know perfectly that devotional service and Krishna consciousness is the essence of all Vedic literature, and they preach this on different planets traveling in outer space. It is stated herein that such sages, including Narada Muni, hardly ever travel on land. They perpetually travel in space. Sages like Narada and the Kumaras travel throughout the universe to educate the conditioned souls that their business in the world is not that of sense gratification, but of reinstating themselves in their original position of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in several places that the living entities are like sparks of the fire, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like the fire itself. If the sparks somehow or other fall out of the fire, that's us, we fell out of the fire of Krishna consciousness, they lose their natural illumination. Thus, it is ascertained that living entities come into this material world exactly as sparks from a great fire. The living entity wants to imitate Krishna and tries to lord it over material nature in order to enjoy sense gratification. In other words, if we want to be the controller, we want to be perfect, powerful, and happy as the center. We want to be the center, the cynosure of all eyes. Thus, he forgets his original position, and his illuminating power, his spiritual identity, is extinguished. You actually forget. You have to be reminded, and then you get your superpowers back. However, if a living entity takes to Krishna consciousness, he is reinstated in his original position. To preach this process of devotional service, sages and saints like Narada and the Kumaras travel all over the universe, educating people, increasing their disciples. Their aim is that all the conditioned souls may be educated to revive their original consciousness or Krishna consciousness, and thus gain relief from the miserable conditions of material life. Sri Narada Muni is a Naishtika brahmachari. There are 4 types of brahmacharis. The first is called Savitra, which refers to a brahmachari who, after initiation of the sacred thread ceremony, must observe at least 3 days of celibacy. Oh my God. The next is called Prajapatya, which refers to a brahmachari who strictly observes celibacy for at least 1 year after initiation. Oh my God. The next is called Brahmachari, which refers to a brahmachari who observes celibacy from the time of initiation up to the time of the completion of his study of the Vedic literature. The next stage is called Naishtika, which refers to a brahmachari who is celibate throughout his whole life. Out of these, the first 3 are Upakurvana, which means that the brahmachari may marry later after the brahmachari period is over. The Naishtika brahmachari, however, is completely reluctant to have any sex life. Therefore, the Kumaras and Narada are known as Naishtika Brahmacharis. Such brahmacharis are called Viravrata because their vow of celibacy is as heroic as the vows of the Kshatriyas. The brahmachari system of life is especially advantageous in that it increases the power of memory and determination. It is specifically mentioned in this connection that because Narada was a Naishtika brahmachari, he could remember whatever he heard from his spiritual master and would never forget it. One who can remember everything perpetually is called a Shrutidara. A Shrutidara brahmachari can repeat verbatim all that he has heard without notes and without reference to books. Don't have too many of those. The great sage Narada has this qualification, and therefore, having taken instructions from Narayana Rishi, he is engaged in propagating the philosophy of devotional service all over the world. Because such great sages can remember everything, they are thoughtful, self-realized, and completely fixed in the service of the Lord. Thus, the great sage Narada, after hearing from his spiritual master Narayana Rishi, became completely realized. He became established in the truth, and he became so happy that he offered prayers to Narayana Rishi. Narada Muni addressed Narayana Rishi as an incarnation of Krishna and specifically addressed him as the supreme well-wisher of the conditioned souls. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that Lord Krishna descends in every millennium just to give protection to his devotees and to annihilate the non-devotees, the miscreants. Narayana Rishi, being an incarnation of Krishna, is also addressed as the well-wisher of the conditioned souls. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, everyone should know that there is no well-wisher like Krishna. 529 Bhagavad Gita. Everyone should understand that Lord Krishna is the supreme well-wisher of everyone and should take shelter of him. In this way, one can become completely confident and satisfied knowing that he has someone who is able to give him all protection. Krishna himself, his incarnations, and his plenary expansions are all supreme well-wishers of the conditioned souls. But Krishna is the well-wisher even of the demons, for he gave salvation to all the demons who came to kill him in Vrindavan. Therefore, Krishna's welfare activities are absolute, for whether he annihilates a demon or gives protection to a devotee, the result of his activities is one and the same. It is said that the demon Putana was elevated to the same position as that of Krishna's mother. When Krishna kills a demon, the demon is supremely benefited, as much as a pure devotee is benefited by always being protected by the Lord. Narada Muni, after offering respects to Narayana Rishi, went to the ashram of Vyasadeva's disciple. Being properly received by Vyasadeva in his ashram and seated very comfortably, Narada Muni narrated the entire story of what he heard from Narayana Rishi. In this way, Shukadeva Goswami informed Maharaj Parikshit of the answers to his questions regarding the essence of Vedic knowledge and what is considered to be the ultimate goal in the Vedas. The supreme goal of life is to achieve the transcendental blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become engaged in the loving service of the Lord. One should follow in the footsteps of Shukadeva Goswami and all the other Vaishnavas in the disciplic succession and should pay respectful obeisances unto Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. The four sects of a disciplic succession, namely the Madhva Sampradaya, which we're members of, the Ramanuja Sampradaya, the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, the Nibarka Sampradaya, in pursuance of all Vedic conclusions, agree that one should surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literature is divided into two parts: the Shrutis, that means what that we just heard, and the Smritis, that which you remember. The Shrutis are the four Vedas, Rig, Sama, Atharva, and Yajur, and the Upanishads, and the Smritis are the Puranas, and the Itihasas, like the Mahabharata's histories, which include the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion of all these is that one should know Shri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the Parama Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under whose superintendence material nature works for creation, maintenance, and annihilation. The Supreme Lord incarnates into three: Lord Brahma, Lord Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, after manifesting the material cosmos. All of these take charge of the three modes of material nature, but the ultimate direction is in the hands of Lord Vishnu. The complete activities of material nature under the three modes are conducted under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Maya Jakshena Prakriti, like that, 9, 10, and in the Vedas, so Aik Shata. I just want to see, we're actually almost out of time, how much more we have in this chapter. Well, it looks like we have quite a bit more in the chapter. Wow. So we're going to have another day of reading this chapter. Okay. Okay, so we're going to end here and take questions. It's a long question, a long chapter, not a long question. So let's stop sharing and then we can unmute you all. So if you'd like to ask questions, or you can type. If you know how to type, you can type in the chat window, or you can raise your hand if you have a question about anything we talked about today. And today, whoops, there goes the camera. Wait a second. Let me just reinvigorate that camera. Give me a second. Right. There we go. So this was the 9th day of reading the chapter. So hopefully we will finish the chapter tomorrow. I know I've been saying that for the last few days. So anyone have any questions? Raise your hand. Oh, Abhay Chaitanya.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Haribol.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Jai.
So my question. So what's the question?
Gurudev, so with the Narayan Rishi, so you know the Narayan Rishi and how you were reading that he's given spiritual instructions to Narad Muni. Just don't try to understand the timing of this, because elsewhere we've heard that Narayan, like the Nara is Arjuna's, and Narayan is Vishnu. So when, like, what is the time? How do we understand that? When did this happen and all that?
When did it happen?
Yeah.
Well, obviously it happened after Narada Muni became Narada Muni. And that happened did happen at the beginning of the Kalpa. Somehow or other, when Narada Muni became Narada Muni, but this whole pastime took place after that. Because Narada Muni in the previous Kalpa was actually a son of a maidservant.
Mm.
And then he took birth as the son of Lord Brahma in this particular Kalpa. So I don't know the exact timing, after he took birth, but he took birth, it described like the thunder and the lightning. And then sometime after that, he talked to Narayan Rishi. But Narayan Rishi, that's an eternal pastime. Also, that Narayan Rishi appears again and again and again, just like Krishna appears again and again and again.
Right.
Not a regular schedule. So exactly when and Narada Muni too, so.
Okay, and this took place on the Earth planet, Gurudev?
Well, it took place in the higher regions of the Earth planet, which is probably some other place in the universe.
Okay.
Sometimes it's described on the Earth planet, but actually it's actually in a different planet. Just like Hiranyakashipu, his whole pastime occurred on a different planet. And Prahlad Maharaj and Lord Nrsimhadev. So,
yeah,
it's described also. There's representatives of this particular location in the Himalayas. You can go to Badarik Ashram, for example.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah,
but you won't find it's like an embassy of a particular country. So whether it happened on another planet, that's not really right.
Okay, thank you, Gurudev.
Okay, nice question. So who else has a question or comment or problem or complaint? Raise your hand. Type in the chat window. Or unmute yourself. You have going once. Going twice. Nobody has a question. We were very philosophical, or the reading was very here it is. Ashwin. So you just typed a period there. That's not a question. So if there's no other questions,
Gurudev, just while
Yeah.
people may be thinking, just on the Nara side of Narayan. So, what was the Nara's position? Is he somewhere? I did read that is like maybe it was in the Gita that is Arjun. Is that right, or what's
Well, Nara is Arjuna. It's the same personality as Arjuna. Yeah.
same personality? Okay.
And Narayan is, obviously God, an expansion of Krishna. So Nara means a human being.
Yeah.
Narayan. So they're twin sons of Dharma. Dharma was the father, of course.
Mm.
And they perform austerities in Bhadarik Ashram. Now, whether you can go and see them in Bhadarik Ashram or whether it's in there's a place called Uttara Badari that's not accessible to human beings, whereas personalities like Madhvacharya, it's described, actually went there to Badari Ashram, but his followers were not able to follow him to go to it's called Uttara Badari. I mean, the higher regions, and whether the higher regions indicate another planet or some other dimension within this planet, that's not specifically elaborated on.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Gurudev.
Okay. We got
Hare Krishna,
Pranesh.
Gurudev.
Hare Krishna.
Please
So
accept my
Dharma,
humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Glory to
Gurudev,
Prabhupada.
Raj is here. My husband is not very well.
Hare
He's
Krishna, Raj.
yeah, say Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Guru
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna, we're praying for you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Keep remembering
I'm
Krishna.
just moving slowly.
Krishna is taking care of you. Just always be listening to Krishna's name. So Dharma, you should always be chanting Krishna's name and have some kirtan around him.
Yes, Gurudev. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Very nice. Okay, we're praying for you. So Praneshwara, you have a question. That's the final question for today.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Haribol. Praneshwara?
Yes. Gurudev, my question is like in Mahabharata, and also we have this in the class in the Bhagavad Gita regarding when one speak criticism about us, and then immediately we have to do the counter of the criticism. So like it become like very difficult, like the people who who speak who listen to criticism and immediate the counter. So how
That's
to
right.
control them?
You got to control your anger. That's what I think. And you have to feel compassionate towards the people who criticize you. Actually, that's one of Bhishma's instructions is in the Mahabharata, is that if one is able to tolerate, you actually get all their pious activities and they get all your bad karma. Because you're a devotee, you're not interested in pious activities, but actually Krishna becomes pleased with you. It's hard. You got to tolerate it. I've seen it. I mean, being a public figure, which I am to a certain degree, I get criticism all the time, and it's generally just made up things, false, just whatever their motivation is. And I take that as an opportunity that Krishna is sending me to be compassionate. And I see the criticism or whatever difficulty I'm put in is arranged by Krishna to help me learn certain lessons. So just like Dharma the bull, he wasn't ready to blame the personality of Kali for the difficulty that he was experiencing. He wasn't ready to tell Parikshit Maharaj to kill Kali. He understood that Krishna was behind it. And so anyway, so if you do that, if you remain compassionate and tolerant, you will get Krishna's mercy. It is hard. It is very hard. when things are unfair. That generally we think this is unfair. Why is this happening to me? Because we have a need for fairness. But here's a question. It's easy to ignore criticism on the internet, but what is the best way to deal with someone directly giving criticism? So far, we just limit interaction for a bit and don't react. But is there a better way to approach the situation? Pray for the person. Be their well-wisher. Instead of just tolerating, just like pray, take it as an opportunity to pray for them that they will not commit offenses. Like Lord Nityananda, he was hit by Jagai and Madai actually. And he prayed to Lord Chaitanya for Madai's benefit. That's hard. It's hard. But it's something that we need to learn if we're going to advance in devotional service. It's a lesson that all of us have to learn. Okay, on that happy note, it's time to end. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we finish this chapter. All the glories to His divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is